y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you are new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do all things spooky. We tell scary stories back and forth, we talk about scary movies, scary books, scary legends, scary places. We do it all here, and if that sounds cool to you, I would love to have you. Now please check below for all of the links to my other social medias and where to send your stories if you would like to, and just little tips and tricks on how to get those in. We have quite a bit of stories to read, and I am so excited, so let's get right into it, shall we? Hey Morgan and Eric, I hope y'all and your families are doing great despite past natural tragedies. I do apologize in advance for my long-winded explanations, context prefaces, and any grammatical errors. This is the first time I wrote something this long since high school. To explain my type of recovery work that I've taken up since March of 2024, I've always liked the outdoors like many other people. I like craftsmanship, navigation, identification, and all other bits of knowledge that you can pick up being out in the sticks. But I also know how common it is for even the most experienced hikers or campers to lose stuff, no matter how minor or very major. These includes whole bags worth of gear, jewelry, pets, and even other people. That's horror for me. Fortunately, I try to find and collect any of those items in likely areas and leave my contact info about. Trust that I do actually have a proper process for reclamation. It started at my backyard property when I was doing some maintenance trying to downsize some thick brush and saw a pink collar on the ground. It was a bit ripped and stained. Luckily, it did have a tag with a name and number, and I could barely make out because of the damage and dirty condition. Turns out the dog belonged to a person that lost her almost 7 miles from my house. It dawned on me how far things can go when they're missing. To make a long story short, the opportunity to give some relief and closure, although it can be depressing at times, I believe is necessary. Please note I've done tons of small-scale recovery in public parks, famous rivers and lakes, and even simple places like a walk down the road or highway with little equipment. Pets are usually the easiest to find as people leave posts on the Ring app, which helped me in some ways. I keep some of the things I find since I get to pick and choose, and not everything is relatively worthy of the effort returning, like shades, footwear, rags, toys, and hand tools. I do plan to start recording my work once I get the proper equipment and time. I decided to take it to the next level to experiment and try to work out in deep woods and mountain ranges. Not my brightest idea given the danger, but I thought I was competent enough, even alone. My first time being out in this large scale of unoccupied land was October 15th. I figured that it was a wildlife management area so the locals could come to hunt, camp, hike, and use the river. A couple of times that I arrived in this place was basically to scout out land to see what places were reasonably accessible by vehicle and how far I could go until I reached private property. There was almost no vehicles parked alongside the trail, and the ones that were looked long abandoned. I had a feeling I couldn't shake about this place, being remorse. Not like I did any wrong being there, but I guess the bad conditions I saw made me feel bad. It was weird. I did meet a guy that was just out drinking and fishing riverside. Thinking that this might be one of the few times I'll interact with anyone out here, I decided to go up and ask about the area. He saw me driving up, I waved at him, and he set aside the pole. This is the convo from the best of my memory. Hey sir, you catch anything good? One lousy ass trout, probably better off using the streams. You ain't about to fish, are you? No, but wow, does this seem like a great place too. Usually is, brother, but it's a nasty day today. Yeah, I'm new to the area. I'm a varmint hunter. Are you out here a lot? Maybe a few times a month. Me and him go back and forth for a bit, talking about taking the family out to the river to cook out and things like that. You local? No, not to this area. Oh, okay. Where are you from? Says the county. What the hell are you doing all the way out here? I'm exploring, sir. Yeah, I getcha. This ain't really the place for that, and I'm gonna be honest, sir. You should stick close around your city. You're far out and these woods ain't so kindly. No shit. How so? Well, I'm not sure if you got family here, but I wouldn't be out alone, and the nearest hospital is like 15 miles away from the forest. The closest police station is 19 miles, and further than that, and the ranger station is rarely in service, so I'll keep that in mind. I do appreciate your concern, but would you say a lot of people come through here? Barely enough to keep the dirt roads and trails clear of the overgrowth. The rangers do pass through once upon a time to do their surveying. Even times when the weather's great, I barely come across anybody. But hey, keep an eye out, bud. For sure, great. Thank you. We introduced ourselves finally, and he also informed me that the recent flood warning, and I told him I'll get on my way. What I gathered at the time is that maybe he didn't want his spot blown up, especially by city boys, which I understand completely. Can't have them making a mess of a good spot, which was now making me think that I wouldn't find much else out here, but I remained optimistic. I now know at that point I missed a few red flags about that area, but the beauty of this place blinded me. The third trip was my time to get dirty. It was implied earlier this place was prone to flooding, so most of my future work in this area will have to be the river. Some of my emergency equipment included a flare gun, SOS light strapped to the back of my plate carrier, clean long towels, a tourniquet, big forest pack that comes with a heat blanket, an extra canteen of water, and a bottle of soapy water and Aquaphor. I've healed some pretty good wounds with that Aquaphor before. Can vouch for that. I put it on my tattoos. I always have the principle in mind when doing this: hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and better to have it and not need it. This took place on October 24th. I parked near the river facing the trail I just drove through. Checked the time, it was around 4 p.m. I loaded up and sent my last location to my girlfriend and a couple of close friends saying, I'm here and I'll text you when I'm making my way home. If by 2 a.m. I don't, send help. I'm glad I could get some type of reception in the most desolate and secluded area. I started my work by traveling up different paths made by quads and bikes, seeing if anyone could have dropped and left behind anything. I walked slow, checking damn near every inch of that forest floor below me, and even the trees around me. All their leaves start experiencing light wind sound, too much like the ocean. You can almost imagine yourself on the beach just without that repulsive sea odor. I was probably only an hour in, and the bike path seemed to have ended. Now only scattered across the paths, indicated by bent, snapped, smushed vegetation and sunken earth, remained that seemed to pop up every so often. I did find a dirty Chevy hat and used condoms laying by the stream. Imagine me heel clicking about that. I don't hope to find anything bad or alarming, like someone trying to bury a body or a meth lab, but I don't really want to come back empty-handed. Almost 2 hours of nothing, and I finally found something. A working Samsung phone with very low battery, which means someone is, or at least was, here very recently. I could see that this person had some text notifications and phone calls as late as 3:20 p.m., but they were blocked from view on the lock screen. The thought of someone being lost out here with no way to contact help scared me a bit. I planned to get in contact with a service provider once I left the area, and was assuming I wanted to leave early. I packed up the phone and continued up trail, although at this point I believe I was just following the gaps in nature tree arrangements. After under a mile of walking, I entered the wetter parts of the forest. The sky was almost completely visible here, and scattered trees and small-sized vegetation spread all around this place. There was a river probably a good 100 to 120 yards in front of me, and it was already pretty dark, and now I learned my lesson to come and do this way earlier. Assuming this was a flood zone, I locked in. If anything was carried off by a flash flood up the stream, it would have to be around here. All of this muddy debris had made me wish I packed a metal detector. The howls of the wind were very audible when I entered this part, but it was around 20 minutes in the wetland when everything started to fall silent. Even through my earplugs, I could feel it. My muddy, splashy footsteps and breathing made me cringe. Why am I so loud? And a conflicting thought hit me. What I need to be quiet for? I knew that the forest ambiance being gone at this point, even the wind stopped blowing. This was almost as weird as the city being quiet, but was only around 12 to 2 a.m. I pulled one plug out to see if I was actually tweaking and checked the time. A little over 8 p.m. It's too early for this. I turned my headlamp on from firefly mode to a dim spot above my helmet and did a slow scan in all directions to see if I could spot anything reflecting back. I did have feelings of being watched. I then switched to a dim flood mode and look around the floors of anything apparent and would call it a day. I see a shiny thin rod sticking up from the ground beside a tree to my left. I looked up at the trunk to see a tree seat, which made me think I'd found someone's hunting spot, and a wave of relief hit me. The black rod turned out to be a broadhead arrow, not too uncommon to find stuff like this. Unlike unspent munitions or scattered shells, but really cool to me. I also found a kid's bike helmet, bits of trash, and one singular yellow patterned flip-flop. Nothing worth returning, and I decided to end my trip. It was still silent, almost 8 o'clock. After exiting the muddy area, I found myself on the good side of a very steep and long ditch. I don't know how I missed this. I checked my GPS. If I had to go straight in one direction, and a little under 3 miles away from it, I'd sighed in irritation because I was just now feeling the weight of my gear. Watching where each of my limbs were placed while crawling up after making it across, I quickly dusted my hands off and checked my surroundings. That's when I spotted a dark figure peeping in my direction, with its body halfway out next to some tree around 20 yards in front of me. It wasn't big or tall, just somewhat in the realm of normal human size, at least from my position. I noticed it slightly leaning on what appeared to be a tall walking stick, but I couldn't tell because of the darkness shadowing it. I laughed a little and yelled, "Oh, what the hell are you doing out this late, man? Wait, is that your hunting chair all the way back there?" I genuinely thought it was another person until it didn't respond. After that brief moment of silence, I said, is there a problem? And waved at it. It hasn't even moved. Now I was weirded out and decided to use my loud voice amp hanging above my plate carrier and said hello, 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 to see if it would acknowledge that at least. I started to turn my headlamp to a bright full focus mode setting, and it went behind the tree as soon as I started switching modes. I noticed how skinny the limbs were on that thing, but glossed over the fact because I got scared. I gave 2 flare warnings, and if that didn't step up from behind the tree, I'll assume that it was ill-intended. I believe I have to state my reasons for my next actions. 1, it was too dark. I couldn't see the person hiding. I had already made multiple attempts to communicate and was ignored. I don't know if they were armed. I was in a path that I would use to get my truck. I was in fear because I was alone with no help around for miles. I call out the caliber to make it clear that it would go right through that tree like butter. After no response, fire a warning shot on the floor next to me, and I noticed the bugs start singing again. I wait a few more seconds and fire 8 quick shots into the trees. I approached the tree bunch quickly and found nothing. I only saw the exit damage from my shots, the tore up floor on the rounds, no blood, no footprints either. I was dumbfounded. Maybe this thing silently made a break for it while I was talking. The trees were obstructing my view, even that close of a distance, of course. Maybe there was nothing there at all and the silent night was getting to me, but I know I saw something. I cussed down the amp one last time and continued to the coordinates of my truck. I want to say here that it being supernatural/paranormal didn't cross my mind, and I never really believed in that stuff, especially things that aren't tangible, but can somehow touch me, although my mind is starting to change. At that point, I was thinking maybe a very disturbed forest squatter. This person or thing looked skinny and very dirty, almost looked naked or at least topless, had long black hair like down to the chest, but I couldn't see the face. What was scaring me the most was not the thing itself, but that it was able to navigate in complete darkness, which had to mean it knew the forester could somehow see. I was essentially a human glow stick with my light on, but I wasn't trying to hide or trying to fight. After that, I was walking cautiously for over an hour, head on swivel. I made it out of the woods, and I almost felt like I was being trailed. I was almost a few hundred yards from the truck, using the off-road path to get to it. I reached the small bridge, which was in a very rough condition, that served as a landmark that I'm getting close to my truck. I was already feeling lethargic, and the guard was starting to fall. The crunch of wet gravel and dirt under my boots was oddly relaxing, and I was struggling to not close my eyes. I yawn as my eyes readjust, and I hear, "Hey, you come here," in rapid succession on the right side of the road. I instantly flash my light toward the direction of the voice and start speed walking away. I could feel those cold bumps rising all over my body, and I was now fully awake with my adrenaline pumping. I didn't spot anyone or any eye of reflection. It's not like there was any brush hindering my view of the forest, so this person or thing was behind a tree or laying down concealed by small hills and stone. After reaching a neat distance, probably 40 yards from where I heard it, I slowly made my way behind some fallen tree and brush. I turned my helmet light, strapped headlight, which was now positioned on the left side of my helmet, purposefully turned on my vest light to the fullest and made sure everyone is on fire. On the amp, I say something along the lines of, "Stop, you will get hurt," and to show yourself. After a quick 360 scan of the area, I continue my retreat towards my truck, walking backwards in the middle of the road, focusing on the direction I heard the voice. That's when I hear the loudest and ugliest scream transition to a wail that I have ever heard. I mean, I've heard a person break their arm and just groan. It didn't even sound like it was close to me, but I couldn't say what direction it came from. I wasted no time and full sprinted toward my vehicle. If I was physically exhausted or sore then, I wasn't feeling it at all now. I finally reached the side of my truck, and I've never been happier seeing that piece of shit. I had to stay on point because I didn't know if it was tampered with given my situation. I slowed down to look around for any indication of anything being near my vehicle and quickly inspected it. Once everything seemed right, I hopped into the driver's seat with all my gear and cranked it up. Not comfy at all, I just sat there to recollect myself until the RPMs dropped. Fear and anger were my emotions. I didn't know what the hell I was up against or how many there were. Also hated how I was essentially pushed out of the forest and my pride was hurt. I slowly started driving back toward the exit of the trail, but that meant driving back to the original spot that I was called out on. So with one hand on the wheel and another clutching my protection, I cruised slowly through the forest, watching for whatever it was, flashing it right often. I was nearing the spot that I heard the voice, and I saw a couple of small boulders that had been moved in the middle of the trail as if it was trying to block off that path. I'm guessing the logic there was that I wouldn't go slightly off-road and stop to move the bigger rocks. I drove around it and kept pushing. It almost made me giggle that it was their best effort. I'm driving maybe 3 to 5 miles an hour, riding the engine because I'm not trying to make it seem like I'm running away. I feel the thump of a rock thrown on my left rear fender, the bed of my truck, and I stop it. In retaliation, I look for any movement after, but unfortunately I catch nothing as the light seems to cast more shadows than actually help me spot. I drive the rest of the trail without incident, but I felt so stressed. I finally reached the path road that I was still in deep sticks with hardly any people around, so I made my way to the nearest gas station. I take off my helmet and mask, and I could feel my whole upper body was wet with sweat, and it was now starting to cool off. Taking off my plate carrier once I reached the pumps. Thank God for that 24/7 marathon. I didn't need to fill up, just happy that they had lights on so that I could properly inspect my vehicle. Luckily untouched besides some common little dirt stains, branch scratching, and that rock barely left a dent. I did some research when I got home, which was kind of tricky as I barely had any web results on the area. The original site is no longer operational, and another website archived the research since 2021 and no updates so far. Here's the excerpt. This area was originally inhabited by Native Americans. This area has been part of the chiefdom of Akut, which was robbed of food by the plundering Hernando de Soto in 1940 and sequentially devastated by European diseases brought by his men, leading to a population decline and probably abandonment. Safe to say death, destruction, and abandonment is the theme of that area. Reflecting on my incidents, crazy how I managed to get off unharmed and make it back home. Your guess on who or what was messing with me out there is better than mine, as I chopped it up to mentally disturbed people. They were willing to die or get critically wounded to scare me. I don't know what they had planned. Side note, I did return the phone on the 28th or 29th, as I did receive a call from the man's attorney, I think the next morning. It wasn't about me, but I guess the guy had legal trouble. Thank you so much for sending that in to me. That was such a long, detailed story, and I loved every second of it. That was fantastic. So this one's on the smaller side. Sorry if this is hard to follow, I just don't talk about all this kinds of stuff. This happened at a family campout when I was younger. We were all camping near Gusher, Utah. Skinwalker Ranch is in that area. Me and my cousins were climbing trees not far from the camp when we all heard this loud scream. We were kids and we all climbed down the tree and ran to the camp thinking someone was hurt, but everyone in the camp didn't hear the scream. My grandma, who lived on the reservation, said that she heard us say that we heard screaming, and she had all of us stay in the camp and keep our eyes closed. I love stories from Skinwalker Ranch. That is like my favorite stuff. But I'm also terrified of it to the point that I have never watched the Netflix documentary, and I have no interest in it. I am so scared of it. All right, next story. Sorry, got jump scared by the picture. Hello, how are you? I'm gonna have nightmares now, thank you. Jesus. So, you know, there's the reflection. It's fine. P.S. I hope this photo doesn't traumatize you. When I was 9 or 10, I had 4 siblings and we all shared a room, so we had bunk beds and they were arranged with a bunk bed on the wall across from the door. Well, one night I wake up burning hot, so I throw my blanket off and roll over, and I was now facing the open door, and I started to get this feeling of being watched. So I opened my eyes, and my sister used to stay up and watch us sleep because she's on the spectrum, and it was just what she did. When I opened my eyes, I looked down the hallway, and it was pitch black in the living room. I get the urge to look up, and when I did, I saw her, a woman. She had long black hair and a creepy stretched out face and a long neck. I only saw her head at the top of the hallway, the part that opens into the living room. Right as I saw her, a chill goes through my body, and I know she noticed me looking at her because she moves her long stretched arm to her face, and her long fingers move to a motion. She was smiling the entire time. I watched her reach down the hallway, and the hallway is really long, by the way, and close my bedroom door. When the door closed, I passed out. When I woke up, the door was closed, and it was around 6 or 7 in the morning. Sometimes I still feel her presence around me, but I'm not scared. She never made me scared except for the first night I saw her. She looked like this. I still remember when I first saw her. I won't be inserting that picture you guys saw all you get to see because I will not be looking at that email again to get it. Love ya. Next story. I've had a couple of different paranormal encounters in my life, and while they're not as bad as some of the stories you've told before, they're still pretty gnarly. Okay, anytime someone says that to me, it's followed by the scariest story I've ever heard in my life. Every time. I'm gonna go in chronological order because all but the last stories are related to dreams or other things like that that mess with me during them. I understand I'm a wordy storyteller, so if this is too much, I recommend at least reading the last story. It gives me shivers. You're never too much. I love it. To start, I had chronic nightmares as a small child, dreams of being terrorized by monsters and being stuck in the pitch black darkness. It was really bad. I would wake up and wouldn't be able to speak. I'd have to wait until I could muster the courage to scream for my mom. Now for an important side note, my mother is very spiritual. She used to be into Wicca when she was younger, but at the time had largely stopped practicing after meeting my dad. She started practicing the craft again, just not strictly Wicca anymore. Yay, divorce. So back to the main story. My mom started with normal remedies, making sure I wasn't watching anything scary and staying up with me until I fell asleep and helping me come up with imaginary friends that would protect me. It didn't do much. It took her saging the house multiple times and hand-making a dream catcher made of some strong sentimental items to make the dreams fully stop. The last dream, as a little kid anyways, I remember having was being in a fully void-like place. It was so dark, and I remember I just walked forever. Eventually I came to 2 pillars carved with snakes coiled around it. I remember having a conversation, but not what it was. Next. So there was a period of time where I had only normal dreams and nightmares, but when I was 14 and on a camping trip at the beach, I had a dream that I consider the proper re-entry to my bullshit adventures with the paranormal, seeing my subconscious as a playground. My parents were just about to separate, and me and my mom were about to move to Oregon. I grew up in California for the most part. It was late spring, and for a couple of months leading up to this, I had been having vivid dreams, borderline lucid. So after a day at like a little street fair, my family took to our small trailer because it started pouring, like once in a lifetime pouring. It sounded like someone was dumping beans in a plastic bowl. I was passed out because rain always makes for a good sleep. In my sleep, I was sleeping between dream scenes. I don't remember most, but I remember the last one. It was a warm, fuzzy, wooded area, and I was vividly remember thinking, hey, I'm dreaming. Well, just like that, the dream shifts into darkness, and a disembodied voice asks how I know I was dreaming, and I say, because it's the middle of the night, and it's raining. I woke up to a hand smacking my thigh. Not hard, but the way to smack someone when they make a dumb joke. I was scared shitless. I don't think I went back to sleep for at least an hour. Next. For the final dream story, it had to do with the house that I called Hall House, because the hallway that offered access to the bedrooms and main bathroom was downright terrifying even during the day. Obviously, the story has to do with sleeping. Like the time I mentioned before, I started dreaming again. It went like normal to vivid, then almost lucid. The night I was stuck in the pitch black again. Then in the distance, a pale face appeared. I stared at the distorted, smiling face for who knows how long. Then it got closer, like a choppy video. The face then disappeared, only to re-emerge and swing right into my face like a deranged acrobat. I shot awake, but was paralyzed. I didn't dare open my eyes for a while because that face was burnt into my eyes, and I couldn't stand seeing its image on my wall staring at me. Why did I say that? It's after image. I don't know why I said it like that. I swear there was something up in that house. The vibes were just horrid. I also got scratched by something in that house, probably whatever liked to mess with me while I was sleeping. Next. Now for my final story. This happens in the house that I live in now. In full transparency, this story is sort of my fault. I was totally aware of the energy that lived in that house at the time. When me and my mom toured it for the first time, I stood in the attic space that's attached to my new room. I was unsettled in that space, but I stood in that room and gauged if I could stand it. Because me and my mom were about to get kicked out of the Hall house, the landlord was a piece of shit and gave us 1 month's notice to kick rocks, despite my mom always paying rent on time and us being pretty good tenants. In other words, we were about to be homeless and we needed somewhere to live. So standing in that attic, I stared out the window for about 10 minutes and felt the energy settle a hand on my shoulder. It didn't feel physical, but more like a buzz of energy. Should I have been worried? Yeah. I was 15, naive, and feeling super stressed about becoming homeless. So anyways, I picked the entity over the uncertainty of trying to find a different place to live. It was fine for a while, just little moments of unsettling silence and looming presence. Then it mimicked my mom. My mom comes home between 5:05 and 5:15 unless she specifies otherwise. My room is upstairs and I always have headphones on, so she normally yells for me to come down. Normally she just yells baby or hi or I'm home. So I was upstairs and I hear baby. It was a little quiet, but I didn't think anything about it. In hindsight, it sounded like her, but it lacked my mom's usual enthusiasm, like it was draining to say. I threw down my headphones and went downstairs. It was empty and I was confused because this was the normal time that she would get home and I could swear she just called for me. I look around the house in all the normal spots, but she's just not there. I was baffled right up until I realized her truck wasn't parked up front and I knew for sure she had driven it to work. I freaked out and sprinted up the stairs, and I slammed my door shut and put my headphones back on and tried to pretend I hadn't just spent 5 minutes entertaining whatever lived in that house. When my mom actually got home, I told her what happened, and she was a bit skeptical, but when I asked or begged for her to cleanse the house, she did it because she didn't know how freaked out I was. She saged the house and managed to banish the entity. Now the energy in the house is very lovely. But to conclude all this stuff, my mom's pretty sensitive to energies. It turns out she had crazy dreams as a kid too, and I probably just inherited my sensitivity from her. As of recent, I've gotten into making charms specifically for protection, which helps a lot. I also get rather accurate tarot readings, which is pretty cool. But yeah, here's my hard-learned advice. If you're sensitive, be careful not to make yourself an easy target, and don't ignore signs. If you think something's hanging around, just cleanse and properly protect your space. It's not worth waiting until they announce themselves. Trust me on that. Thank you for reading, even if this doesn't end up in a video. It did. Well, that was horrific. Yeah. Well, this video is getting pretty long, so I am going to cap it there. That's all. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you tomorrow.